The regulation for hazardous materials changed in 2012 to include qualified persons, that it must be completed by a qualified person. So that was the big change there. The regulation under 2012 or 2112 has always been there. If you're a homeowner, what you're required to do is, first of all, hire qualified contractors to abate your home. But also, as a homeowner, you need to ensure that a qualified person has come into your house to do a hazardous materials survey prior to renovation, demolition, raising a house, moving a house, anything like that. Asbestos is obviously one of the key ones. It can be mold, it could be silica, definitely lead. Extensive rodent feces, cat feces, birds, raccoons, all of that needs to be identified and highlighted not only to the homeowner but to any contractors coming in to do the remediation or renovation work. When you're dealing with hazardous materials, you want to be able to control exposure not only to the homeowner but to the worker. So in doing so, you're going to look at things like, for workers, they're digging into it, so they're going to have a minimum of a respirator, half-face respirator with a P100 cartridges. They're going to have Tyvek suits with the hoods. Because again, hair like this, the size of asbestos alone just would penetrate and get all over me. You also want to ensure that depending on the severity of the asbestos they're handling, for example, vermiculite, it would be fully enclosed area. It would not be any access to the normal home. Often families have to move out to get this done properly. They would have negative air units to ensure that the containment is holding in any rogue asbestos fibers. If a building is going to be reoccupied, it will often get sprayed with a sealant to bind back any asbestos fibers to the building structure itself to ensure that they're not just floating around everywhere. And there's full decontamination of workers as well as the home. So a wipe down procedure to ensure that anything that is still laying around is properly remediated and gone. How they finish this whole process off is with clearance sampling. So when a building is going to be reoccupied, so maybe they have to remove a part of the attic and a wall, for example, to add on to, what they'll often have to do is they'll be reoccupying the rest of the building. So clearance sampling is done by, again, a qualified person, which is typically an industrial hygienist or a lab person that's very knowledgeable on how to do it. And they would go in and take a clearance sample to ensure the air doesn't contain asbestos fibers. So it's actually clear to enter unprotected. It's assessed based on friability, and you're trying to never get asbestos to a friable state because friable means it's easily able to get airborne. So when they use things like power tools, it's a big no-no, to be honest, because any abrasion, any heavy force and energy put into the asbestos can easily get it into the atmosphere. So yeah, power tools and what else? Water is very commonly used. That's a very common thing along with a HEPA-vac with DOP testing. So water is your best friend when it comes to things like asbestos and silica, even mold, because again, it keeps the mycotoxins, it keeps the silica, it keeps the asbestos fibers down, and it drops it to the floor where it can be easier cleaned rather than airborne. There's two wonderful websites, worksafebc.com and hiddenkiller.ca. Both of those websites are a wealth of information for asbestos, sometimes a little bit difficult to navigate, but it's all the materials there. You can get exposure control plans, you can find safe work procedures, you can it's huge. You can also always call the info line for WorkSafe BC. It's 1-888-621-7233. Check that number. But it's a phenomenal. They have hygienists on info lines that can answer all your questions. They're a wealth of information. So they're really, there's no better resource to call than them.